April 29th, 1945. The war in Europe was days from ending. American soldiers of the 45th Infantry Division marched toward a small town near Munich called Dachau, expecting a German base or a weapons depot. What they found instead was something no soldier could have been ready for. A place where the smell of death hit before the gates even came into view. Inside those gates, the true face of the Nazi regime waited, and the men guarding it were still standing there, rifles in hand. The discovery. When the first American units arrived, they saw a train sitting on the tracks outside the camp. Dozens of boxcars, all filled with corpses. Some were skeletal, some still had scraps of uniforms. There were hundreds of them. Soldiers stopped talking, some gagged. Others stood frozen, staring at the scene in disbelief. For days they'd heard rumors of labor camps, but no one had imagined this. When they reached the main gate, the sign read, "Arbeit macht frei," work sets you free. But freedom didn't live here. Death did. Inside, survivors crawled from the barracks, barely human, eyes hollow, bones showing through skin. The smell was unbearable, the silence worse. It wasn't a battlefield. It was a graveyard that still breathed. The guards still standing. And then the soldiers noticed something else. The SS guards were still there, armed, alert, but no longer fighting. Some stood with hands raised, others backed against walls, confused, terrified. They knew what the Americans had just seen, and they knew what was coming. Some tried to surrender politely, calling out, "Don't shoot!" Others threw down their weapons and fell to their knees. The US soldiers moved quickly. Orders were still clear: secure the camp, disarm the guards, and keep them alive. But the air was electric. Every man in that courtyard was trembling, not from fear, but from rage. The arrests begin. The soldiers rounded up the guards one by one, lining them up near the administration building. Many were young, barely 20. Some wore pristine uniforms, others looked disheveled, shaken. No one spoke. The only sound was the clicking of safeties being switched off. Then came the prisoners, thousands of them, gathering around the Americans, crying, shouting, pointing at the guards. Some screamed names, others begged, "Don't let them escape!" It was chaos wrapped in silence, soldiers trying to do their job while standing in the middle of humanity's worst nightmare. The moment of realization. One officer later wrote, "We thought we were liberators, but when those gates opened, we realized we were witnesses." Dachau wasn't just another victory, it was the moment the soldiers saw what they'd really been fighting against, and who had been standing behind it. The shock settles in. Inside the gates of Dachau, the US troops were surrounded by silence, the kind that comes after horror. The smell of death lingered everywhere. Every step they took led to another barrack filled with bodies or dying prisoners. And standing in the middle of it all were the SS guards, nervous, pale, trembling. The soldiers didn't need to ask what had happened here. The evidence was all around them. Still, they had orders: secure the area, arrest the guards, and keep them alive for questioning. That last part was the hardest. The soldiers take control. Captain John Doliboas, one of the officers on site, recalled how the Americans began rounding up every German they could find. SS guards, officers, even cooks and secretaries. They were disarmed immediately. Weapons piled up in the dirt: pistols, rifles, knives, even whips. One by one, the guards were lined up against a wall. Some tried to explain. "We were only following orders." Others just stared blankly at the ground. Nearby, American medics tried to treat the survivors, but even they couldn't focus. They kept looking at the guards, at their clean uniforms, polished boots, and unshaken hands, standing only yards away from thousands who had starved to death. The prisoners' anger. Word spread fast inside the camp. The Americans are here. Liberated prisoners began stumbling out of the barracks, crying, shouting, laughing, and collapsing. But when they saw the SS men being kept alive, something inside them broke. They screamed. They lunged at the guards. Some tried to attack with bare hands. American soldiers had to hold them back, yelling, "Stop! We'll handle it." One witness later said, "The prisoners didn't want freedom. They wanted justice." And in that moment, the soldiers felt both: the duty to uphold order and the deep, burning desire for revenge. Documentation and evidence. Military photographers arrived soon after. They began taking pictures of everything: the bodies, the barracks, and the arrested guards. They knew the world wouldn't believe this without proof. The soldiers forced some of the guards to help carry the bodies and clean the grounds, not as punishment, but to document exactly what they had done. It wasn't violence, it was evidence. As the guards worked, a few broke down crying. Others kept repeating, "We didn't know, we didn't know." But no one believed them. The emotional collapse. Hours passed, but the anger didn't fade. Some soldiers were crying, some stared into nothing. One private later said, "I thought I'd seen the worst of war." But this wasn't war. This was evil. By evening, hundreds of guards were under arrest, sitting in rows on the ground, watched by young Americans who'd aged 10 years in a single day. The line between justice and rage was getting thinner by the hour. And before sunrise, that line would snap. The longest night. As the sun began to set over Dachau, the air grew colder, but no one noticed. The camp was eerily quiet now. American soldiers guarded hundreds of captured SS officers and guards, sitting on the ground, their hands behind their heads. Behind them lay everything they'd done: barracks full of corpses, survivors too weak to stand, and piles of clothing that once belonged to the dead. The soldiers tried to keep their minds focused on orders: secure the camp, hold the prisoners, wait for command, but no one could think straight anymore. The breaking point of humanity. Private Charles Payne, one of the US soldiers, later recalled how hard it was to even look at the guards. He said, "They stood there clean, well-fed, well-dressed, while behind them were people who had been starved almost to death. It was hard to look at them and remember you had rules." Every soldier felt it, the weight of rage sitting just behind discipline. Some paced, some cursed under their breath. Others stared at the ground, gripping their rifles so tightly their knuckles turned white. The guards said nothing. Some looked ashamed. Others stared ahead with that same expressionless loyalty that had defined them for years. Orders and evidence. Military officers arrived before midnight to take official control. Intelligence units began photographing the guards and documenting everything inside the camp. Names, ranks, serial numbers, all recorded. But the task was endless. Dachau wasn't just one camp. It was a system of over 30 sub-camps, thousands of prisoners, and more than 500 SS personnel still alive when the Americans arrived. As each guard was processed, witnesses came forward. Survivors pointed them out, shouting accusations. "That one beat us! He shot my brother!" The Americans logged the names. Some guards broke down crying, others denied everything. But the soldiers could barely hold their composure. They were following orders: arrest, don't punish. Yet every scream from the survivors reminded them what these men had done. Silence before the outburst. By dawn, the camp was under full US control. The guards were lined up near a coal yard under armed watch. The officers hoped to transfer them soon to the rear for interrogation. But beneath that uneasy calm, something dangerous was growing. Survivors continued to gather near the fences, shouting, sobbing, pleading. The soldiers tried to keep them back, shouting, "It's over! It's over!" But for those who had lost everything, over didn't mean peace, it meant reckoning. And for the American troops holding back that storm of emotion, both their own and the prisoners, was becoming impossible. Within hours, that tension would explode. But for this one night, Dachau was still, a place between liberation and revenge, between justice and chaos. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for the latest videos.